October 24, 2005, Ocilla, Georgia. A spotless white residence remains tightly sealed beneath the harsh 80-degree sun. Within there is total stillness. The doors are secured by deadbolts. A vehicle rests in the driveway, its engine cold. Yet just inches beyond the manicured front yard, lying among dry pine needles, rests one peculiar detail. An off-white powdered latex glove. It carries a faint chemical rubber odor, a sharp difference from the flowering sweet olive. This sterile covering is the sole imperfection in an otherwise flawless setting. The woman who called this place home is missing. She will never be seen again. Ocilla, Georgia covers precisely 3.4 square miles. It is a quintessential southern enclave where humidity settles heavily, frequently climbing beyond 90 degrees Fahrenheit during late summer, and secrets have historically been difficult to conceal. With barely 3,500 inhabitants, the community functions through complete familiarity. Neighbors can identify the particular sound of one another's vehicle engines. The local church congregation acts as the town's central gathering place, while anonymity is simply a fiction. In a community this small, everyone knows your everyday routine. Standing at the very heart of this closely connected network was 30-year-old Tara Faye Grinstead. She was far more than a resident. She was a local institution. Driven by a powerful inner ambition for excellence, Tara lived a life marked by a compelling, nearly cinematic duality. To an ordinary observer, she embodied the ideal image of Southern grace. A former Miss Tifton who had appeared on stage competing for the coveted title of Miss Georgia, she carried herself with practiced elegance. Her appearance remained immaculate, flawlessly styled hair, fitted clothing, and a bright, camera-ready presence. Still, rhinestone crowns and evening dresses represented only one part of who she was. Beneath that glamorous exterior lived a fiercely committed, deeply independent intellectual. Tara passed her days through the cinder block corridors of Irwin County High School. Working as an 11th grade history teacher, she exchanged the spotlight for chalk dust and the profound responsibility of molding young minds. She was not an educator who merely punched a clock. Excellence was her expectation, as she maintained a demanding yet profoundly empathetic classroom. Her psychology was grounded in continual self-betterment. Tara was pursuing her doctorate in education, using quiet evenings to pore over demanding academic texts beneath the gentle glow of her living room lamps. Her long-term professional ambition was to move into administration, where she could directly reshape and transform the educational system across her rural district. Beyond that, Tara put her pageant background to work for the next generation. Countless weekends found her mentoring local teenage girls, instructing them in interviews, posture, and public speaking. She gave them a practical model for developing lasting self-confidence in a county where opportunities beyond the area could seem painfully limited. She was the woman young girls hoped to emulate and the teacher parents trusted completely. A historic, single-story home on West Park Street became her refuge from this punishing routine. The residence mirrored her orderly nature, carefully kept, tastefully furnished, beautifully decorated and protected. She lived by herself with only her cherished dog, Herman, sharing the home. The German Shepherd mix offered loyal companionship along with a reassuring sense of protection for a single woman creating a life according to her own terms. In a town where the passage of time could seem to crawl with the slow, measured rhythm of a dripping faucet, Tara Grinstead remained relentlessly in constant motion. Everyone who encountered her could clearly see her upward path. She was building a solid, enduring future, and that is exactly why this energetic, extensively documented, and conspicuously visible life makes her abrupt, complete disappearance so deeply difficult to comprehend. Someone so firmly rooted in her community, someone who carefully maps out her week hour by hour, does not simply leave her home and vanish completely. Irwin County High School stands as the unquestioned nerve center of the area. Across rural districts stretching through miles of farmland, the local school serves a purpose far beyond education. It forms the social, cultural, and athletic heartbeat of the whole community. The structure itself is an ordinary mid-century building. Its lengthy hallways are bordered by battered metal lockers. Its chilly cinder block walls wear institutional paint, and the lingering smell of industrial floor wax masks the dense humidity filtering in from the Georgia clay outside. For teenagers moving through those corridors, the social order is absolute. Football jerseys, family heritage, and closeness to the agricultural prosperity surrounding the town determine status. Amid this intense small-scale world, the history teacher occupied a distinctive and deeply respected role. Her classroom operated under strict control, She upheld demanding academic expectations, insisting that students engage directly with lessons instead of merely memorizing dates. Still, despite the challenging curriculum, her classroom was viewed as a refuge. She recognized the particular strains of growing up in a geographically isolated community. She heard her students' concerns and advised them about college applications, career choices, and life beyond the county boundaries. Even so, she kept an unbreakable professional distance. She was a mentor, not a friend. No one seriously challenged her authority, largely because she conveyed an air of total confidence. To understand the rupture that was soon to unfold, it is necessary to grasp the particular demographic split among the school's alumni. Every graduating class in a community this size creates two separate groups of young adults. Some use their diplomas as a means of leaving, while others build meaningful, respectable lives nearby. Others stay bound to the town, gradually descending into a stagnant cycle of low-paid work, substance abuse, and fading memories of high school glory. The class of 2002, which graduated 3 years before the incident, contained two young men who fit the latter pattern, although they came from dramatically different circumstances. The first was Bo Dukes. Around this area, the Dukes surname held considerable financial influence. His family possessed a vast, lucrative pecan orchard beyond the city limits. Bo was raised with the unmistakable privilege that comes with owning land in the Deep South. During his teenage years, he carried a striking combination of charisma and conceit. He was a young man used to seeing his misconduct quietly erased through family connections. Loud, magnetic, and deeply entitled, he carried himself as though consequences belonged to other people. After graduating, he joined the military, a decision that briefly appeared to indicate a move toward discipline. Yet misconduct stained his service, eventually resulting in a discharge that brought him straight back to his hometown. He returned not as a chastened veteran, but as an unsettled, unpredictable figure. He regarded local laws and community expectations as flexible suggestions instead of firm boundaries. The other figure was Ryan Duke. Although his last name sounded exactly the same, Ryan had no family relationship to Bo. Their positions in the community, meanwhile, could hardly have been more different. Ryan was raised in a broken household, without the financial protections that repeatedly softened Bo's falls. During high school, Ryan was a fairly competent athlete. He competed on the tennis team and had a quiet, understated physical strength, yet at heart he was a follower. Unlike his peers, he lacked forceful charisma and preferred disappearing into the background rather than inviting confrontation. After graduation, Ryan's life began moving rapidly in the wrong direction. He fell into serious substance abuse, forming dependencies that steadily damaged both his ambition and his physical condition. He became a compliant, passive presence, a subdued shadow following behind louder and more controlling personalities. Together, these two men developed an improbable yet profoundly poisonous codependency. Bo supplied transportation, resources, and unpredictable energy. Ryan supplied an audience and virtually no opposition. Their days were spent wandering around the county, drinking excessively, using narcotics, and driving the deserted country highways in an aging white pickup truck. Their association with the history teacher was limited, though confirmed. Both had attended her class. She had marked their assignments, supervised their tests, and probably understood the enormous difference between what each might accomplish. By the fall of 2005, however, they were simply remnants of her professional history. Tara was intensely absorbed in her doctoral work and her ambitious career progression. They, meanwhile, were entirely preoccupied with finding their next high. Nothing about their circumstances offered any obvious reason their lives would cross again. They occupied entirely different levels of the local social landscape. She embodied discipline, beauty, and aspiration. They embodied the county's bleakest and most stagnant elements. Still, within a community spanning barely 3 square miles, physical closeness can easily erase social boundaries. Across the region, the oppressive atmosphere carried an increasing sense of desperation. Much of that tension came from the vast, quiet pecan orchards surrounding the town. Defined by straight rows of enormous trees and loose, sandy earth, the orchards were utterly secluded. After dark, they provided complete darkness and near-total concealment. Saturday, October 22, 2005, arrived beneath a heavy, motionless heat that settled over the region. Moisture hung against the pavement, intensifying the smells of fried dough, caramelized sugar, and diesel fumes. It was the weekend of the annual Sweet Potato Festival, a celebration that briefly increased the local population and shattered the county's normal, sleepy routine. streets filled with crawling pickup trucks and streams of pedestrians. For Tara, however, the occasion offered no real leisure. Instead, it demanded an intense and highly visible social commitment. Throughout the daylight hours, she was immersed in the frantic atmosphere of the local beauty pageant, drawing upon years of experience to oversee the contestants. Inside the auditorium, the air was oppressive, filled with a dizzying combination of aerosol hairspray, nervous excitement, and harsh stage lights. With her meticulous focus, Tara adjusted evening dresses, gave guidance on walking form, and kept the timetable moving. It was draining, intensely social work. By the time the crowns had been presented and the auditorium started emptying into the warm, humid night air, she had remained standing for nearly 12 hours. Wanting a moment to unwind, Tara drove to a laid-back barbecue hosted by a former school superintendent. The gathering was intimate, made up of colleagues and acquaintances. The mood could not have differed more from the pageant's charged atmosphere. She ate a modest meal, joined in easy professional conversation, and let her stiff posture loosen. When the clock neared 11 p.m., she indicated that she was leaving. She courteously told her host that fatigue had finally overwhelmed her, and that she urgently needed to go home and sleep. She stepped outside toward her vehicle, gravel crackling beneath the tires as she reversed from the driveway. The trip to West Park Street was remarkably short, only a few miles along vacant, unlit residential roads. Once she reached home, her shift from public figure to private woman began. The house remained still. Her German Shepherd mix welcomed her at the entrance. Tara followed her nightly routine. She wiped away the heavy stage makeup, removed her jewelry, and changed into soft sleep clothes. The doors were locked, outside lights were turned off, and the air conditioner produced a quiet mechanical hum against the southern warmth. She settled into bed, expecting the deep, dreamless sleep that comes with complete exhaustion. Far away, however, the night was moving to an entirely different rhythm. Ryan Duke was deeply trapped in chemical dependency. His craving for narcotics had eclipsed whatever remained of his judgment and instinct for self-preservation. He needed money, and he needed it right away. His resources were gone, his favors exhausted, and desperation had taken over. His body was beginning to fail him. Muscle tremors, a pounding heart, and the nauseating cold sweat signaling withdrawal. Driven by this overwhelming need, he started roaming the dark neighborhood streets. He was not searching for anyone in particular. He was looking for an opening, a house that appeared exposed, a car whose door had been left unlocked. Eventually, he reached West Park Street. The historic one-story residence stood completely dark. Through Ryan's drug-clouded thinking, it looked like nothing more than a quiet, secluded home. Somewhere a purse might sit unattended on a kitchen counter. Somewhere several $100s might be taken quietly while the occupants remained asleep. He approached the property, his boots disappearing softly into the dry pine needles spread across the yard. He went around toward the back of the house. The safeguards Tara generally kept in place were thorough, but within a town of 3 square miles, one missed detail can be enough. He discovered an entrance, a door that gave way. He slipped through. Moving from the humid night air into the cool, dark interior was startling. He remained motionless, allowing his eyes to adapt to the deep shadows. Except for the appliances humming, the house was completely silent. He started crossing the rooms, placing each foot carefully to avoid noisy floorboards. He was no seasoned, methodical offender. He was a shaking addict driven by instinct alone. Then the quiet was broken. Tara awakened. The precise sound or sensation that alerted her remains known only to her. Perhaps a shadow passing through the window's ambient light, a scrape across the hardwood, or the sudden horrifying awareness that an unfamiliar person had entered her refuge. She did not remain still. She responded. The fragile calm vanished immediately. He panicked. She resisted. Adrenaline surged through him. He rushed forward. Their struggle was abrupt, chaotic, and brutally physical. He was trapped, frightened of discovery, and terrified of the strong, athletic woman fighting desperately to survive in the darkness. He hit her. The blow landed hard. She stumbled backward. The confrontation ended as suddenly as it had started. Ryan stood above her amid the suffocating silence of the bedroom. His breath came harshly, catching in his throat. He waited for movement. There was none. The truth of what had happened quickly broke through the fog of withdrawal. He had not found any money. The killing was now a reality. Blind terror seized him. He could not simply leave her behind. His desperate urge to conceal the terrible mistake overwhelmed every other thought. He had to remove her from the house immediately. His hands trembled violently as he seized a quilt from the bed. He covered her body with the thick fabric, laboring beneath the dead weight. Every noise inside the house suddenly sounded like an alarm. The dog barked, producing a sharp, bewildered cry. Ryan paid no attention. His attention had narrowed completely to the problem of getting her away. He reached into his pocket and removed a pair of latex gloves. He pulled them over his damp hands, making a frantic effort to avoid leaving fingerprints on the doors or cloth. Grabbing the thick quilt, he started dragging. He pulled the wrapped body through the hallway, outside, and into the suffocating Georgia night. As he hauled the weight toward the driveway, the quilt caught on something. He shifted his hold. During the hurried, awkward movement, friction tugged against his right hand. The latex glove slid off his perspiring skin. It dropped onto the layer of dry pine needles beside the carefully trimmed front lawn. He never saw it happen. He placed the body inside the vehicle. The metal doors crashed closed, their heavy thump carrying through the deserted street. Ryan climbed behind the wheel. His thoughts immediately went to the one man he knew with the resources, local knowledge, and utter absence of moral limits needed to make the crime disappear. He drove the vehicle beyond the city limits. His destination was the remote, expansive solitude of the Hudson Peak and Orchard. October 24, 2005. Monday morning at Irwin County High School followed its usual strict routine. The 8 a.m. bell rang through the cinder block corridors. Lockers banged closed. Students moved into their designated seats. Yet, room 612 stayed completely vacant. No lights, no lesson plans written on the chalkboard. For another teacher, arriving late might lead to a routine call from the front office. For the 11th grade history teacher, an unexplained absence represented a serious, immediate warning. She had never failed to appear without careful advance arrangements. By 8:30 a.m., a small administrative irritation had become authentic, growing concern. Faculty members tried contacting her mobile phone. Each call went directly to voicemail. At 8:50 a.m., local police were sent to West Park Street for a routine welfare check. The patrol officers who arrived discovered the locked property preserved in an unsettling, sterile condition. The pearl-white Mitsubishi Eclipse remained parked at an angle in the driveway. Its engine block was completely cold. Strangely, the vehicle was unlocked. A clean $100 bill lay openly inside the center console. Thick streaks of red Georgia clay covered the tires, an obvious, striking difference from the paved neighborhood streets along her normal weekend route. Officers pounded on the front door. Their sole answer came from the frantic, solitary barking of the German Shepherd mix inside. Standard protocol was abandoned. The officers worked around the deadbolts and forced their way into the residence. Inside, the air felt shockingly cold. The central air conditioner was operating at full capacity, battling the dense morning humidity pressing through the window panes. Nothing inside looked obviously disturbed at all. Across the hardwood floors, not a speck of dirt was visible. The living room furnishings remained precisely arranged. Her mobile phone sat connected to the wall, steadily charging on the bedroom nightstand. One outfit, the casual clothing she probably wore the day before, lay carefully across a chair. Her cherished dog wandered anxiously, visibly unsettled by being alone. Yet several essential daily belongings had vanished. Her purse, her car keys, the house keys. Everything about the setting created a glaring logical conflict. The secured doors and plugged-in phone pointed toward a resident who had prepared to spend a peaceful night at home. The absent purse and keys suggested that someone had deliberately gone out. Still, her car remained parked in the driveway. A prominent local woman leaving on foot into the profound darkness of rural Georgia, abandoning both her transportation and means of communication, contradicted every known pattern of her meticulously documented life. Investigators from the Georgia Bureau of Investigation soon reached the property, taking over from the local patrol officer. Almost immediately, the home changed from a personal refuge into a carefully mapped forensic scene. Technicians searched the door frames for latent fingerprints. They examined every detail with intense care, marking the perimeter with yellow crime scene tape. A nearby neighbor took custody of the dog. Word of the vacant home traveled across the 3-square-mile community with astonishing speed. Within hours, local worry had expanded into an enormous county-wide search operation. This was not a divided community sitting quietly and waiting for federal authorities. Ocilla had a strong tradition of agrarian self-reliance. By Tuesday morning, volunteers had established an improvised command post in the town center. Hundreds of civilian searchers left their jobs at nearby agricultural processing facilities and farm supply shops to participate in coordinated grid searches. Irwin County's geography created a logistical nightmare for any organized recovery effort. Its landscape consisted of an immense, suffocating mixture of thick pine woods, broad farmland, and deep, motionless swamp water. Temperatures and humidity drove the heat index beyond 85 degrees Fahrenheit, scorching the search areas and wearing down volunteers. The air carried diesel fumes from portable generators along with the constant drone of insects. Men riding horses pushed into dense, nearly impassable brush. ATVs cut muddy trails through heavy undergrowth. Civilian helicopters and low-flying crop dusters surveyed the county overhead, searching for disturbed soil, vulture activity, or abandoned clothing. Local hunters who knew the backwoods terrain intimately guided trained tracking dogs through miles of soaked ravines. Searchers advanced shoulder to shoulder, repeatedly striking tall, dry grass with sturdy walking sticks. They searched the dark waters of the Alapaha River. They methodically emptied secluded agricultural ponds. They examined hundreds of deserted barns, corroded grain silos, and deteriorating hunting blinds spread throughout the countryside. Despite the extraordinary amount of manpower involved, the physical results remained absolutely nothing whatsoever. No purse, no keys, no ripped clothing. The landscape seemed simply to have consumed her. When the first week gave way to the second, the excitement of the original search gave way to a dark, growing paranoia. The emotional shadow of the disappearance profoundly changed Osilla's social fabric. With no obvious forced entry and no bloody crime scene, the danger had no recognizable shape. It suggested that the offender was probably someone functioning within their own community, someone familiar with the town, someone familiar with her. Residents who had gone decades without locking their doors suddenly visited hardware stores for heavy deadbolts and exterior floodlights. Hardware aisles were steadily stripped of ammunition. Trust disappeared altogether. Every pickup truck passing through town drew scrutiny. Any neighbor showing a fresh mark on an arm or offering a slightly conflicting timeline became the subject of quiet, cruel speculation at the local diner. The community had by then successfully searched hundreds of miles of harsh, unforgiving country. They had produced tens of thousands of flyers. They had collected an enormous cash reward through donations from locals. Still, they were essentially pursuing a phantom. The ambitious history teacher had disappeared from a secure home, leaving behind a frantic searching community and an official investigation that was nearing a massive decade-long barrier. The sole physical clue authorities had was the sterile latex glove abandoned in the front yard. A crime lab technician successfully recovered a male DNA profile from inside the rubber material. This should have provided the breakthrough needed for an immediate resolution. Instead, when the genetic profile was searched against the National CODIS database, it produced 0 matches. The offender remained a ghost. Desperate, investigators began methodically swabbing the cheeks of dozens of local men, requesting DNA from anyone who had ever crossed paths with the victim. This broad analytical effort quickly generated 2 prominent red herrings. The first involved a former romantic partner. He was a local law enforcement officer who had recently returned from an overseas military deployment. Their relationship had lasted for years but was extremely volatile, officially ending only months before the incident. The tension surrounding their breakup was thoroughly documented. As a result, he immediately became the focus of public suspicion. Investigators questioned him repeatedly, searching for even the smallest weakness in his account. He insisted he was completely innocent, offering a firm alibi that placed him miles away, surrounded by confirmed witnesses during the crucial period of the abduction. Despite the intense wave of local speculation, forensic examination of his vehicle revealed no physical connection whatsoever. His DNA failed to match the glove. The second suspect was a married police officer serving in a neighboring jurisdiction. Phone records showed extensive communication between him and the history teacher, including calls made on the very Sunday she disappeared. He eventually acknowledged leaving a business card wedged tightly inside her front door that weekend. The discovery threatened to permanently damage his private life. The GBI questioned him aggressively, working from the theory that a concealed affair could have developed into sudden violence. Yet his alibi proved completely unbreakable. He had merely been trying to check on her welfare after she failed to appear at a social engagement. His DNA was likewise ruled out. These intensely pursued investigative paths eventually ended in complete dead ends. Investigators were pursuing shadows through Georgia's red clay. Years slowly stretched into an entire decade. The enormous reward fund remained entirely untouched. Missing person posters taped across the windows of the local hardware store gradually faded beneath the relentless southern sun. The case file continued expanding. becoming the largest in the state's investigative bureau history. It held thousands of interviews and countless leads that went nowhere. Osceola learned how to endure the lasting trauma. The vacant residence on West Park Street was eventually sold. The community abandoned its organized grid searches and resigned itself to the suffocating mystery. The deadlock remained unbroken until late 2016. At that point, the digital age thrust an enormous, unwanted spotlight onto the 3-square-mile community once again. Independent media, particularly a highly produced serialized audio documentary, arrived in Irwin County. Its creator began knocking on doors, revisiting old witnesses, and exposing the town's darkest secret to a worldwide audience of millions. The renewed scrutiny created enormous pressure. Local authorities were compelled to open a dedicated tip line. Mounting public attention became a powerful psychological catalyst. The renewed attention also made the case impossible for local authorities and residents to ignore any longer, forcing long-dormant questions back into public conversation across the town once again. The sheer flood of publicity started breaking through the community's rigid silence. The breakthrough did not come from some brilliant forensic technique. It emerged from a failure of nerve. In early 2017, the GBI received information that dramatically redirected the entire course of the 12-year investigation. A young woman came forward carrying an enormous psychological burden. She told authorities that her current romantic partner, the volatile pecan orchard heir, Bo Dukes, had revealed a horrifying secret to her. According to her account, Bo said that in 2005, his former high school associate, Ryan Duke, had entered the teacher's home intending to steal money for narcotics. The burglary turned violently wrong. Ryan strangled the homeowner, placed her inside his vehicle, and drove her to the secluded property belonging to Bo's family. The informant said Bo had been recruited not to carry out the murder, but to erase all evidence completely. To investigators, the names were startling. Ryan Duke and Bo Dukes had never appeared on the main radar. They were marginal figures completely removed from the victim's ambitious social circle. Critically, because Ryan had never faced a felony arrest, his DNA had never been entered into the national database and could not produce a match to the glove. The GBI acted with immediate precision. The 12-year grace period had ended. Agents found Ryan and brought him into an interrogation room. The man sitting across from them was a hollowed-out shell, physically and mentally damaged by years of serious substance abuse. He lacked the mental strength necessary to preserve a decade-old falsehood. Under concentrated interrogation pressure, his facade collapsed almost immediately. He confessed. He described his desperate need for drug money, the sudden decision to target the dark house, the chaotic confrontation, and the horrifying realization of what he had done. He identified where the body had been disposed. Most importantly, he acknowledged that the sterile latex glove recovered from the front yard was his. It had slid from his sweaty hand in blind panic while he pulled the heavy quilt across the lawn. A routine cheek swab finally delivered the precise DNA match the GBI had pursued for more than 4,000 days. Investigators then turned forcefully toward Bo Dukes. Ryan had carried out the initial violence, but Bo had engineered the complete destruction of the evidence. Ryan admitted that together they transported the body deep into the Hudson pecan orchard. There, they constructed a huge fire. For days, they kept the blaze burning, reducing the remains entirely until nothing identifiable remained among the ashes. A decade of frustration dissolved within hours. The elusive phantoms disappeared, replaced by two profoundly troubled men who had lived openly while carrying a terrible feel secret as the entire town ripped itself apart searching for answers. Their swift arrests permanently destroyed the men's toxic codependency. Inside the courthouse, their united front disintegrated into a bitter, high-stakes contest of mutual betrayal. Bo Dukes went before a jury first in 2019. The state did not prosecute him for the original violence, but for the deliberate destruction of a human being. Prosecutors explained how he used his family's secluded property to arrange a fire so fierce that it reduced the victim to microscopic fragments of bone. The jury found him guilty on every count, resulting in a 25-year prison sentence. 3 years afterward, the primary aggressor finally faced trial. By 2022, his account had completely reversed. Under oath, he testified that his original confession had been fabricated entirely because of overwhelming drug withdrawal and fear. He tried to place the full murder accusation on his imprisoned former friend, insisting his sole involvement had been transporting the body afterward. The jury's decision reflected the complicated condition of the deteriorated evidence. They acquitted him of malice murder and convicted him only of concealing a death. He received the maximum 10-year sentence, a bleak, staggering ending for a community that had waited 17 years for complete justice. Eventually, the local community returned to its quiet routines, though the basic trust that had once defined the area never entirely returned. The vast agricultural property where the destruction took place remains just beyond the borders, quiet and imposing. Beneath the oppressive southern summer heat, the long, orderly rows of trees throw deep shadows across the sandy soil. They stand as a lasting, living monument to a devastating fracture. A brilliant mentor fueled by relentless ambition was deliberately erased under cover of darkness, leaving an entire county permanently changed by a terrible truth that had remained hidden in plain sight for more than 4,000 days. Here is Aaron Goodwin inside a Las Vegas courtroom on June 5, 2025. 8 months before that, roughly 3 hours along Interstate 15, he was sleeping at a Best Western Off-Com Parkway in Basto, California. He had no idea that his hotel had been identified in a text message that night. At the time, none of those details were known to him, and nothing about the situation had reached his attention. He also had no idea that a stranger possessed a picture of his rental vehicle, a picture of his face, and a name for what was meant to happen to him that week. That stranger was serving 3 life sentences at a Florida prison for killing his parents and his brother. Yet he was coordinating everything through a phone he was prohibited by law from possessing. The woman who supplied the address was Aaron's wife. "This is my Roz, and I'll never forgive myself." Aaron Goodwin was born April 1, 1976, in Portland, Oregon, and he made a career from being observed rather than observing. He handled camera and electrical work around Las Vegas and film premieres, then spent time shooting for the UFC until 2004, when 2 men named Zach Beans and Nick Grath needed somebody to operate a camera as they explored haunted locations for an independent documentary. Aaron accepted the assignment. That documentary turned into a television pitch, and in 2008, the pitch became Ghost Adventures, which has continued airing in one form or another ever since. It began on the Travel Channel before later moving to Discovery and Discovery Plus. His official position on the program was equipment technician, but his real function, the one viewers recognize, appears in his own network biography. Many call him a teddy bear or Zach's bait of choice. He is the person sent into the dark room first, alone inside a cell block or basement with a camera while everybody else observes from somewhere safer. That same biography even assures viewers they will hear him say, "Dude," roughly 20 times per episode. The program is insanely popular. Its cult-like following is colossal. It is huge. For countless people, that popularity centers on one man. 18 years spent watching someone get scared in darkness while remaining decent about it. For many viewers, though, it became something more specific and personal than fandom. It was what they turned on when they wanted to fall asleep. Making a living while isolated on camera is an unusual way to create a career. By the time this story begins, he had been doing it for more than 16 years. It had already cost him a marriage. He had divorced early during the show's run, and according to most accounts, he had not anticipated marrying again. The travel schedule of that job, wigs at a time in unfamiliar towns, chain hotels beside whatever building the crew was filming that week, is not irrelevant to what comes next. It explains how a Best Western in Bardo, California, could later be identified with complete precision by somebody who had never been anywhere close to it. Aaron's whereabouts were never concealed. They appeared on call sheets, were texted to relatives, and were occasionally posted on his own Instagram. Throughout most of his marriage, that openness was simply part of loving someone whose work demanded that he vanish into unfamiliar buildings for a living. Aaron and Victoria had been together since around 2018. In October 2019, he proposed before the castle at Disneyland, a park they both loved enough to also want as their wedding setting. They chose May 4th, 2020, as their date. The pandemic took that date, along with several dates that followed. The ceremony finally took place in August 2022, before the Haunted Mansion at Disneyland, a setting that seemed to almost everyone like an appropriate joke for a man who spent his career investigating haunted houses. "It finally happened," Aaron wrote afterward. "I couldn't be happier." For the following 2 years, the public picture of their marriage remained steady. It repeatedly showed a happy couple. Early in the marriage, they decorated a spooky-themed Christmas tree. Aaron later posted a photo kissing his wife on New Year's. Then, less than 2 weeks before her arrest, Victoria shared a video of Aaron's Valentine's Day gift and posted, "I love you." 1 week before her arrest, she posted a photo of the two of them sitting on the couch with their cat. Aaron later said that, for 7 years, he thought he was living in the most loving relationship he had ever known. And everyone around them thought so too. That was not merely a figure of speech. They all did. Long before Aaron Goodwin existed, there was a golf scholarship. Victoria was raised in California's San Fernando Valley, the daughter of a Salvadoran father and an Irish-German mother. By high school, she had become skilled enough at golf to attend college on scholarship at Warner Pacific University. "That was pretty much my whole life," she later said, recalling fall training, spring training, and summers devoted to workouts and playing instead of rest. She planned on becoming professional. But then she received a diagnosis of a rare disorder that stops the esophagus from properly moving food and liquid, ending her competitive career before it had truly started. In its aftermath, she created a public identity centered on that loss. On Instagram, she called herself a rare illness plus CPTSD warrior, sharing posts about surgical scars, flare-ups, and the emotional burden of chronic pain. During December 2024, she appeared on a podcast called Motivational Talks with Ash and discussed it extensively in great detail. The golf career that had ended, the disorder that had taken its place, and the purpose she had reconstructed as an advocate for people living with invisible conditions. None of that really accounts for what happened afterward. It is only the person she had been before any of it. A woman whose public narrative, much like her husband's, involved transforming something painful into something strangers could watch and admire. That was Victoria Goodwin's public identity in spring 2024. An advocate, an athlete who had lost the thing she had been built for, a woman who had turned her own pain into something useful to strangers. Then she sat down and watched a documentary. The series, called Control-Alt-Desire, was a 3-part Paramount Plus true crime production concerning a Florida man named Grant Amato, who in January 2019 shot his mother, father, and brother inside their family home, after they attempted to stop him from emptying the family's accounts to fund an online relationship with a webcam model he had never met. A jury found him guilty on 3 counts of first-degree premeditated murder. He is serving 3 life sentences without the possibility of parole, and he has since appealed his conviction. This is not the first time, and I don't think it'll be the last time, that we've seen people who have fantasized and romanticized people who are incarcerated for very serious crimes. Victoria's interest went farther than most and developed faster. She contacted him. She later told police that contact started in May 2024 and ended that November, although some early reports placed her initial messages slightly earlier. It began on Facebook. Before long, it shifted to a cell phone Amato was prohibited from possessing inside a Florida state prison. Court records say Amato was texting and Facebook messaging a woman from Las Vegas, Victoria Goodwin. The pair allegedly exchanged messages about being in love together, and Goodwin allegedly told Amato her husband would not agree to a divorce. She was not using her real name with him. She called herself Victoria Candy. In September 2024, Aaron learned that his wife had been unfaithful. He knew nothing yet about the plot, only the affairs themselves, after discovering she was cheating on me in September of last year with multiple men, including the man using the name Vincent, who turned out to be Grand Motto. I gave her the option of divorce. Where we could work, we could try to work it out, because I love her so much. He would only discover after her arrest that Vincent was Grant Mado. He said she appeared shattered. According to him, she told him she could not bear to lose him, and during those weeks, she made him feel more valued than ever before. The communication with Amato continued throughout September. In fact, it intensified within 2 weeks after Aaron offered his wife an opportunity to rescue their marriage. The messages that would ultimately send her to prison were already being composed. Aaron was recording an episode near Calico Ghost Town, the deserted mining settlement only a short drive from his hotel. That week's routine was much like every other stretch of work on the road. Gear, call times, and a room reserved in a production company's name. He had no reason to wonder who might know his whereabouts. Victoria gave Grant his location and sent him a photograph of the pair together, along with an image of the black Dodge minivan her husband was driving. Investigators later determined that the location came through Find My, the phone application couples used to monitor one another, rather than a hotel chain or a broad area. It was a precise address, a particular vehicle, and a specific companion. details assembled by someone who had normal, permitted access to knowing exactly where her husband was. By this point, Amato was passing everything along to a third man, whose identity appeared in the messages only as Gordo. The pair had reserved $11,515 for after the job was completed. Amato had requested $2,500 in advance through PayPal. He also explained to the third man how the timing was supposed to unfold. He said he would call Aaron personally and keep him distracted. That is as close as the record gets to explaining what the final minutes of Aaron Goodwin's life were intended to resemble. A stranger's phone call, a friendly voice from a Florida prison cell, holding a man on the line inside a hotel room in Bartow. "I'm so anxious," Victoria wrote that day. "I just can't believe it's happening. How did I get to this point? Am I a bad person? Because I chose to end his existence, not divorce." The following day, October 3rd, Amato contacted Gordo once more. When you have the following day, you have Amato on that phone texting Gordo being like, "Hey, is it done yet? Has it been done?" It had not been done. The public record has never explained why. No one has established whether Gordo was an actual person somewhere near that motel. No one knows whether he ever intended to carry out anything whatsoever. And no one has determined whether the entire arrangement was simply a fiction one man was selling to another from inside a prison cell. That remains one of the unanswered questions at the center of this case. Aaron completed the shoot. He returned home to Las Vegas. He had no idea any of it had occurred. That same day, Amato was asking if it had been done. Inside a prison 2,000 meters away, corrections officers entered his cell and confiscated his phone. Not because of Aaron, not because of Victoria. No one in Nevada was investigating anything. No one in Nevada even knew there was a case to investigate. This case did not begin with a detective, a tip, or a suspicious spouse. It began with an ordinary cell inspection. Officers at the Okeechobee Correctional Institution in Florida searched an inmate's cell and discovered a Motorola cell phone that should not have been there. Contraband phones are common enough within Florida's prison system that the state conducts regular sweeps specifically to find them. The officers did not know who any of these people were. This phone happened to belong to Grant Amato. It was forwarded to a laboratory. Its contents were downloaded and examined. The fact is, this case was cracked wide open, not because an attempted murder was investigated, and not because the attempt failed, but because officers discovered the inmate's cell phone inside his cell. And if they had not found that phone, the question becomes, could it have worked? Could Aaron Goodwin be dead today if that phone had never been discovered? Then came another gap that nobody has ever explained. The phone was seized on October 3rd. Florida did not contact the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department until March 4th, 5 months later. During those 5 months, Aaron Goodwin continued filming. He posted the New Year's photo. He posted the Valentine's photo. He went to work, returned home, and slept in the same house. Meanwhile, evidence that his wife had supplied his location to a man arranging his death sat in a queue 2,000 meters away. Aaron had no way of knowing that the reason he remained alive, if any of it had ever been real, was a contraband sweep at a prison he had never heard of, performed by officers who had never heard of him. Detectives acted almost at once after Florida made the call. They executed a search warrant at the Goodwin residence and then questioned Victoria. She told them she had discovered Grant Amato through a true crime documentary and began corresponding with him. She described it as a pen-pal relationship. She said she had felt lonely and that there had been trouble within the marriage. When detectives showed her the messages concerning money, she claimed she believed she was paying for cell phones. When confronted with messages discussing her husband's murder, she denied ever wanting him killed. She said she had been imagining another life, but no longer felt that way. She was arrested on 2 felony charges, solicitation to commit murder and conspiracy to commit murder, and booked into the Clark County Detention Center with $100,000 bail. Just 250 meters away, Aaron was inside an abandoned medical complex, recording a Ghost Adventures lockdown with Zach Bagans and the rest of the crew. The cameras were already running when his phone suddenly lit up. "Dude, hold on. You all right? You okay? Well, the police from my house." "What? It's fine, but I'm not staying in here by myself." He walked outside, the footage capturing that moment, his expression changing and crew members asking whether he was okay, still appeared in the finished episode 7 months later, edited down to only a few seconds. At this point, we will not be showing any further footage, but this is when Aaron receives a call from police, informing him that his wife has been arrested and accused of conspiracy to commit murder by hiring a hitman. 6 days following the arrest, Aaron filed for divorce. The complaint contained routine Nevada wording before adding a sentence that was anything but routine. There was no possibility of reconciliation for the date the marriage began. It states on or about May 4th, 2020. They were not married on that date. That was the wedding date the pandemic took away. Their marriage did not happen until August of 2022. No one has explained the discrepancy. Within 2 weeks, he amended the filing to include civil allegations, assault, false imprisonment, negligence. He told reporters he had been blindsided. Victoria initially pleaded not guilty. In April, her attorneys reached an agreement. She would plead guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit murder, a charge carrying a range of 2 to 10 years. The solicitation charge would be dismissed. Prosecutors agreed to offer no sentencing recommendation whatsoever, leaving the matter completely in the judge's hands. Her family could have posted the bond that would have allowed her to remain at home. She chose to remain incarcerated. Erin said almost nothing publicly that spring. One Instagram post, a smiling emoji thanking people for their support. By the time of sentencing, the 2 sides of the case had separated, and they never reunited. The defense position, presented by attorney David Brown, was that the plot had a definite conclusion. Miss Goodwin, it's clear that as of November, she had completely distanced herself from the group. She had moved on from it. There was very limited contact. She had nothing further to do. No efforts were made, and the phone exchange, I'd also comment whatever money moved after the first payment, Brown argued, was extortion, not conspiracy. He requested probation from Judge Nadia Krall. His client had no prior criminal history, and he argued that 92 days in jail had already made an impact on her. The state's position, presented by Deputy District Attorney Christopher Hamner, was more limited and considerably more troubling. He acknowledged she had no criminal record. He also agreed this was not merely a brief angry message from a dissatisfied wife. This is not a situation where maybe an unhappy wife simply kind of made a fleeting text that said, like, I can't stand my marriage, like I wish he was just gone, or something along those lines. It was far more than that. What investigators had uncovered, he told the court, extended far beyond the amount discussed that October. And ultimately, this investigation reveals about $60,000 was sent from Miss Goodwin over to Mr. Amato. And nowhere within those messages, he said, was there even one instance where she attempted to reverse it. In that report was simply, at no point does Miss Goodwin ever try to claw it back. Erin explained to the court what that $60,000 truly represented. It was not an investment, not a transfer, and not merely a figure on paper. It was nearly his entire life savings, money earned over 18 years of being sent into dark rooms first, gone without his knowledge to associates of the man who had arranged his murder. In that same statement, he used a phrase the plea agreement never needed to address. Now, this government should put a head out to kill me more than once. Black got blackmailed and spent almost all our savings to keep it quiet. More than once, the defense argument depended on the idea that the plot had a clear conclusion. Erin's version of events did not. Both interpretations fit the same collection of facts. The public record does not determine which interpretation is correct. Sentencing took place on June 5, 2025, a Thursday, before Judge Nadia Krall in the 8th Judicial District Court in Las Vegas. Victoria spoke first. Firstly, and most importantly, I would like to apologize to Erin. I'm so immensely sorry for the pain and anxiety I've caused you, and the betrayal you undoubtedly and rightfully feel by my actions. I need you to know that I will always hold love for you. My absolute promise to you is that you will never see or hear from me. I intend to leave the state of Nevada, and you and anyone else will never be in danger of me ever again. Later, near the conclusion, she gave the court her account of the months leading up to her arrest. Prior to my arrest, I was taking steps toward mending my marriage and correcting my mistakes that led me here. Then Erin took the stand and was sworn in. Your Honor, for 7 years, I thought I was in the most loving relationship of marriage with my best friend, someone who I trusted whole heart and laughed with every day. Someone who made me feel like I was her, one and only. I was loyal to her and did whatever I could to make her happy. I thought we were something very special, and so did everyone else. He described the affair, the choice he had given her, and the savings that were gone. He also described learning only after her arrest, and only from detectives rather than from her, what the relationship with Amato had truly become, and fell more in love with Amato. They even got spiritually married. And now I was called the first husband. They talked until she was arrested, and she sought his help to kill me. But worst of all, she lied to me every day. I didn't know about any of the murder plot, the hitman, or the blackmail until the detectives told me after she was arrested. He spoke about armed security, therapy, and a fear that still remains. I will always wonder why. He told the court he did not know what sentence would be appropriate. Whether she got minimum or maximum time, I still won't feel safe whenever she's released. I feel like this deserves prison time. I don't know. So, just leave it here, John. Thank you. Kroll did not approve probation. Victoria Goodwin will serve between 36 and 90 months in prison on one count of conspiracy to commit murder. 36 months, a minimum of 3 years, before becoming eligible to be considered for release. She had already served 92 days, and those were credited toward the front of the sentence. Some context for what that number does and does not mean. The charge to which she pleaded guilty carried a sentencing range of 2 to 10 years. As part of the agreement, prosecutors had promised to recommend absolutely nothing. No figure, no minimum, no plea for a particular result, leaving the full decision with a single judge. The prosecutor explained the reasoning to the court, in open court, making clear why the state had chosen to remain silent. One reason we're not making a sentencing recommendation is we kind of recognize that, look, this is somebody without a record, right? Who's never really done anything like this before. But the concern I've always had is that when you examine the facts here, they are serious. The defense then sought probation for Victoria, asking the judge to keep the sentence outside prison for her under those circumstances here. Judge CWL did not impose the maximum, nor did she choose the minimum. She settled close to the bottom. After the credit awarded that day is counted, Victoria Goodwin will become eligible for parole consideration around March of 2028. She will be 35 years old. Beneath this case sits a question the plea agreement never needed to resolve, and it is the question nearly everyone eventually reaches. What was meant to happen afterward? Grantado is serving 3 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole for killing his mother, his father, and his brother. He will never be released. He will never be paroled. Florida prohibits conjugal visits. Whatever Victoria Goodwin thought she was creating with him, there was no possible version ending with the two of them together inside a room. So investigators looked through the record for a simpler explanation, and what they found is thinner than most people expect. No life insurance policy covering Aaron Goodwin has been publicly disclosed in this case. No will, no beneficiary alteration, no financial instrument that would have paid after his death has been reported by any outlet or appeared in any filing that has surfaced. The sole money investigators actually followed moved in the opposite direction. Approximately $60,000 left the marriage and went to associates of a man in prison. Money prosecutors said was sent, and Aaron said represented nearly everything he had. Instead, what appears in the record is a relationship. Investigators characterized the messages as two people talking about how deeply they loved each other. Aaron testified that the pair had undergone what he understood to be a spiritual marriage. And within that relationship, he was the first husband. He said detectives were the ones who told him about it. That is the entirety of it. A man who could never leave prison. A woman who could never go there with him. A marriage existing solely through text messages and a husband standing between them. Whether there was ever a genuine plan behind it. Whether Gordo existed as a person or merely a story. Whether the money purchased a murder or purchased a deception, the public record does not answer. Once the plea was entered, nobody was required to determine it. By late 2025, the Las Vegas investigation had ended without additional charges against anyone besides Victoria. Whether that reflects a failure by the system or simply the boundary of what the evidence could establish, the record offers no answer. Aaron returned to work. The show had already resumed filming. The divorce continued after the criminal case ended. On August 1, 2025, 8 weeks into her prison sentence, 5 months following her arrest, and 2 months after standing before a judge and assuring him that Aaron would never hear from her again, Victoria Goodwin formally answered his divorce petition. She did not consent to it. In her response, she stated that she believed the marriage could still be reconciled. Aaron's position remained unchanged from the day he filed. His complaint had expressed it in the bluntest wording the form permitted. There is no possibility of reconciliation. That October, Discovery Plus broadcast the Downey episode, the one containing the call. Zach Beans narrates the moment. The footage lasts a few seconds before stopping. Aaron said he would not watch it because he did not want to experience that night again or revisit everything that had happened beforehand. There is something worth considering in that. He is the person they send into the dark room first. For 18 years, he has been left alone on camera in places that frighten people, all for someone else's entertainment. Yet the worst thing that ever happened to him also happened on camera and was also broadcast, and he is the only person connected to it who has never watched it. In an Instagram statement declining interviews that same month, he said he could not discuss any of it yet, that he probably would not make it through an interview without crying, and that he simply wanted the divorce finished so he could move forward. "This has been the worst year of my life," he wrote. It would be easy to remember this case because of the details that made it spread. The prison messages, the assumed name, a man who makes his living hunting ghosts, becoming the target of a hunt himself. But that is not really what this is about. It is about a man who spent 7 years believing he was loved, then discovered otherwise over 4 days in March, mostly by accident. He is alive because a guard in a state where he had never even set foot opened a cell door while searching for a phone. Nobody was looking out for him. He was simply fortunate during a year that otherwise offered him almost nothing to feel fortunate about. He was present for all of it. He just did not understand until everything was already over what he had actually been living through. At 4:46
in the morning, a Virginia convenience store employee made a disturbing discovery.
Their coworker had disappeared. Her car remained in the parking lot, exactly where she had left it that night. The engine was still running, and everything she needed to leave remained inside the vehicle untouched. Yet what happened to Arielle Smith after she locked up the store that night remained concealed just outside the camera's view. In this episode of Black Girl Gone, I share the story of 28-year-old Arielle Smith, who disappeared after closing a convenience store in Clairville, Virginia. Her last moments would ultimately hold the key clue to discovering who had taken her. This is Arielle's story. For most adults, the thought of being abducted seems like a distant fear. As girls, we are warned about strangers and taught to stay aware of our surroundings. But as we grow older, the possibility of someone simply taking us against our will starts to seem less believable. Statistically, it is uncommon, especially for adults who simply disappear without warning. Most adults who vanish have not been abducted by strangers. Yet uncommon does not mean impossible. There are times in everyday life when we are far more exposed than we may recognize. For millions of people, one such moment comes from nothing more than going to work. Late night and overnight employees frequently leave buildings when parking lots sit empty, nearby businesses are closed, and most people have already gone home. Some spend their entire shifts alone, and once the night ends, someone could be watching while they secure the doors, head toward their cars, or carry out the trash. These ordinary routines happen so often that eventually, they no longer seem dangerous or unusual to the people living them at all. For 28-year-old Arielle Smith, working late was simply a normal part of her job. She had ambitions reaching well beyond the convenience store where she worked regularly. Arielle was working toward a career and building a future for herself. But on a cold January night in 2022, after finishing her shift at a small convenience store in rural Virginia, Arielle stepped outside to handle one final task before heading home. She never returned. Arielle Latrice Smith was born on July 1, 1993, and was raised in Virginia's Northern Neck, a tight-knit group of small communities surrounded by Chesapeake Bay and its rivers. At 28, Arielle lived in Hague, Virginia, close to her sister Lydia, who played an important role in her life. People described her as free-spirited. She was a young woman with her own vision for her future, and as she moved through her late 20s, she was starting to seriously consider what would come next. She hoped for a healthcare career, with nursing among the paths she wanted to pursue, and she had already started searching for ways to enter the field. She was interviewing for positions at nursing homes, hoping one of those openings could mark the start of the future she had imagined. But like many people working out their next step, Arielle still had expenses to cover while pursuing something better. So, as she waited, she took a position at a convenience store. It was meant to bridge the gap between where she was then and where she hoped to eventually be. And in early January 2022, that was where she found herself. At 28, she was working, interviewing for different positions, and waiting for the opportunity that might take her life in another direction. She had no way of knowing that she would never have the chance to discover where that next opportunity could have led her. By January 2022, Arielle was employed at the Little Sioux Food Store, a small convenience store and gas station situated along Northumberland Highway in Clairville, Virginia. Little Sue was the type of roadside shop familiar to those living in rural areas, a place where people could fuel up, grab a bite, or purchase a few necessities without making the trip into a bigger town. But its location also meant that once evening traffic faded, there was little activity around the store. So, on Wednesday, January 12, 2022, Ariel arrived at Little Sue for work, scheduled to handle the closing shift that evening. As the hours passed, customers came and went, and nothing indicated that she wouldn't eventually finish her shift, get into her vehicle, and drive home. However, sometime before closing, something occurred that left Ariel feeling uneasy. At some point during her shift that evening, she texted her sister Lydia to say that someone was making her uncomfortable. According to Lydia, Ariel told her that a man had been lingering around the store. She didn't mention any confrontation or claim that he had threatened her, but his presence alone was enough to make her uncomfortable. And while working the closing shift, that feeling was hard to dismiss. As the night progressed, fewer customers would pass through the doors. Eventually, Ariel would need to shut down the store and step outside into an almost deserted parking lot. For the moment, though, the man was simply someone who had stayed around longer than she wanted. Yet Ariel choosing to tell her sister about him suggests that whatever she was experiencing that night, she didn't want to keep it to herself. And within hours of sending that message, Ariel would disappear. Early the following morning, Thursday, January 13th, one of Ariel's co-workers arrived at Little Sue to begin their shift. But when they drove into the parking lot, something immediately stood out. Ariel's car was still there. At first, that fact alone might not have seemed significant. Perhaps she had gotten a ride home, or maybe something had gone wrong with her vehicle. But as the co-worker approached, they noticed something else. The engine was running. Ariel was nowhere inside, so they entered the store, expecting they might find her there, but the building was empty. Ariel was gone. Outside, her vehicle continued running in the parking lot, while her personal belongings remained inside, including her purse, things she would not normally have left behind. Something about the situation simply didn't add up. Ariel had been expected to close the store the previous night. Several hours had gone by, yet sometime between the end of her shift and her co-worker's arrival that morning, it appeared Ariel had left everything behind. Her car, her belongings, her job, and nobody knew where she had gone. At 4:46 a.m., Ariel's co-worker contacted the Northumberland County Sheriff's Office, and within minutes, deputies were heading toward the Little Sue convenience store. When they arrived, they encountered the same unusual scene Ariel's co-workers had found. The store stood empty. Ariel was missing. Her car was outside, with her belongings still inside, and there was no immediate explanation for where she might have gone. But Little Sue contained something that could potentially offer an answer, because the store had surveillance cameras. Before investigators could establish where Ariel had gone, they first needed to determine exactly what had occurred during the last hours of her shift the previous night. Investigators began examining surveillance footage from the store, hoping the cameras would reveal what happened after Ariel completed her shift. Gradually, they began reconstructing her final movements. Around 9:05 p.m., Ariel could be seen starting the process of closing Little Sue for the evening. She shut down the registers, switched off the lights, and prepared the store to be locked. At one point, she stepped outside and started her car, apparently letting it warm while she completed the closing duties. Then she returned inside. For several more minutes, everything looked completely routine. But around 9:18 p.m., Ariel stepped outside once more. This time, another vehicle pulled up in the parking lot and approached her. Ariel briefly entered the vehicle, but shortly afterward, she got back out and returned inside the store. Once back inside, she completed the closing procedure, activated the security system, locked the front entrance, and then picked up a bag of trash that needed to be carried outside before she left for the night. Her vehicle remained idling, still waiting for her in the parking area outside the store. Ariel carried the garbage away from the store and began making her way toward the dumpsters behind the business. Then she passed beyond the surveillance camera's range, and from that point forward, she was never captured by them again. Yet one detail in that footage immediately caught the investigators' attention. The vehicle Ariel entered at approximately 9:18 p.m. It had been sitting outside Little Sue only minutes before she secured the store and headed toward the dumpster. Investigators therefore needed to determine who was behind the wheel, what had brought them there, and exactly what took place during those few moments Ariel spent inside. detectives immediately began working to identify the vehicle and trace where it had gone. By using cameras placed along nearby highways, they tracked its route and eventually obtained a license plate number. That information led them to the individual who had been driving. The driver was eventually found and brought in for questioning by investigators. Considering the timing, investigators had reason to examine the person carefully. This was one of the final people known to have seen Ariel before she disappeared from the camera's view that night. However, within only a few hours, detectives had an explanation for the vehicle. The driver turned out to be a close friend of Ariel's, who had stopped at Little Sioux that evening just to see her. Investigators confirmed the friend's story and eventually ruled them out as having any connection to Ariel's disappearance. One significant question had been resolved, but the answer immediately created an even larger and more troubling one. If Ariel had exited her friend's vehicle, gone back inside, secured the store, and then walked toward the dumpster by herself, what occurred after she left the camera's range? Investigators now knew where Ariel had last been observed.
The bag of trash.
With more than a
The dogs
location.
then picked up
It
her
also
scent from there,
established the
and the
precise
trail
time Ariel
led away
headed
from the
toward
dumpsters
dumpster
around the
Little
east
Sioux
side of
and
the store
vanished.
and toward
Virginia
Walnut
State
Point Road.
Police K-9 teams were then brought in to conduct a search of the surrounding area. Handlers placed the dogs near the dumpsters where Ariel had last been seen carrying the garbage bag. The dogs picked up her scent there, and the trail then moved away from the dumpsters, around the store's eastern side, and toward Walnut Point Road. Investigators followed while the dogs continued tracing Ariel's scent along the road. Roughly 100 wide from Little Sioux at Walnut Point Road, the dogs stopped. The trail had simply ended there. There was nothing from the tracking dogs suggesting that Ariel had traveled farther along the road or entered the nearby area. Her scent had simply vanished from that point. To investigators, that discovery raised a troubling possibility. Ariel might not have departed Little Sioux on foot. Someone may have been waiting for her just beyond the reach of the store's cameras. If Ariel had entered another vehicle on Walnut Point Road, investigators were now facing a completely different type of search. While investigators tried to reconstruct what had happened beyond Little Sioux, news of Ariel's disappearance reached her relatives. That very morning, her sister Lydia learned that her sister had never returned home from work. Almost immediately, the message Ariel had sent the previous night carried a far more frightening and unsettling significance. Only hours before, she had told Lydia that someone was lingering around the store and making her uncomfortable. Now Ariel was suddenly missing. Her car had been discovered running outside her workplace, while her personal belongings remained inside. No one could explain what had happened after she left the store that night. For Lydia and the rest of Ariel's family, there was little reason to think she had simply chosen to disappear. She had not packed a bag, made arrangements, or planned to go somewhere. Ariel had gone to work expecting to return home. As Thursday morning continued without anyone hearing from her, the fear surrounding her disappearance intensified. Her family started contacting anyone who might have spoken.
While Ariel's family
desperately
desperately
hoping to
searched
find
for
answer
some
about where
sign
she
of her,
might have gone.
investigators
But
were
nobody
beginning
had
to
seen
realize that
Ariel.
someone else
Nobody
may
had
have known
heard
exactly
anything from her.
what
With
happened
each
after she
unanswered
walked out of
call,
the Little
the
Sioux
possibility
that
that
night.
something terrible had happened to her became increasingly difficult for them to dismiss. While Ariel's family desperately continued looking for any trace of her, investigators were starting to understand that someone else might have known precisely what had occurred after she left the Little Sioux that night. On January 12, 2022, 28-year-old Ariel Smith vanished after completing her shift at a gas station in Claraville, Virginia. Within hours, a frantic search was underway to uncover the mystery surrounding her disappearance and determine what had happened to her. Before Ariel vanished, she had left behind one clue investigators had not yet been able to find on any surveillance camera: a message telling her sister that someone inside the store had been making her feel uncomfortable. Now detectives needed to determine exactly who she meant. When investigators interviewed Lydia, she told them about the text Ariel had sent her while working her shift the previous night. For detectives, that gave the message an entirely different significance, because they were already working to establish who had been near Little Sioux during Ariel's final hours. They now knew that sometime that night, Ariel herself had become concerned enough about a specific individual to warn her sister. Detectives therefore moved quickly to secure Ariel's phone records. They needed to establish precisely when the message to Lydia had been sent and match that timestamp against surveillance footage from Little Sioux. If they could identify the exact moment Ariel sent the text, they could return to the cameras and examine who was inside the store, who was outside, and who might have been lingering around the property at that particular time. Investigators went back through the footage once again, this time searching for something much more specific. Their goal was no longer simply to understand what happened to Ariel after she left the store. They wanted to find the person who had made her afraid before she disappeared. Meanwhile, as detectives worked to identify the individual Ariel had warned her sister about, the search for her was quickly widening. Investigators had by then confirmed that she had been missing for several hours, and concern was mounting that she might have been taken somewhere beyond the immediate vicinity of Little Sioux. The Northumberland County Sheriff's Office was joined by Virginia State Police and the FBI as authorities prepared a significantly larger search operation. Search teams spread throughout the surrounding area, checking roads, fields, wooded properties, and other places near the store. Investigators focused much of their attention within several miles of Little Sioux, searching for anything that might reveal where Ariel had gone after her scent ended along Walnut Point Road. But they were also racing against a factor they could not stop. A winter storm was rapidly moving toward Virginia. Snow and ice were forecast to reach the area, and investigators understood that once the storm arrived, anything outdoors, including footprints, tire tracks, discarded objects, or other potential evidence, could be concealed or destroyed. So their search became even more urgent. Meanwhile, investigators started examining evidence beyond what could be physically observed. Ariel had vanished in a blind spot, and there was no definitive surveillance image showing what occurred after she walked away from the store, meaning detectives needed alternative methods to establish who had been nearby at that time. They began examining digital evidence, including cell phone data, hoping it would reveal who had been near the store during the narrow period when Ariel disappeared. As investigators started connecting those pieces, one name would soon become central to the case: Tyrone Samuel. And Tyrone Samuel's name surfaced because of one highly specific pattern found within the cell phone data. Investigators had focused on the brief window surrounding Ariel's final appearance on surveillance, searching for phones that had entered the vicinity of Little Sioux shortly before she vanished and then departed soon after. One phone fit the pattern they were seeking. It arrived near Little Sioux shortly before closing time. Then, within minutes of Ariel disappearing beyond the camera's view, the phone began traveling away from the area. Investigators traced the phone to Tyrone Samuel. Ariel had told Lydia the previous night that someone at the store was making her uncomfortable. Investigators couldn't yet determine whether Samuel was the man Ariel had been describing, but they had established something else. His phone placed him near the store during the critical window when Ariel disappeared, and then it moved away. Detectives now needed to locate Tyrone Samuel and determine where he had gone afterward. The investigation moved quickly, and by Saturday, January 15th, only 3 days after Ariel was last seen, authorities had obtained enough evidence to take Tyrone Samuel into custody. Samuel, who was 50 years old at the time, was arrested and charged with Ariel's abduction. But she remained missing, and Samuel's arrest had done nothing to answer the question that mattered most to her family. Where was she? With Samuel in custody, investigators shifted their focus to locations associated with him. Search warrants were secured, and law enforcement began examining Samuel's property in Heathsville, Virginia, searching for anything that could connect Ariel to him or reveal where she had been taken after leaving Little Sioux convenience store. Forensic teams moved throughout the property while investigators continued searching the surrounding area. By then, 3 days had gone by without any contact from Ariel, and her family remained waiting. Search crews were still looking, and investigators were now examining the property of a man they believed had abducted her. What they still didn't know was whether they were searching for Ariel herself or merely evidence of what had happened to her. But as investigators searched Samuel's residence, they began uncovering evidence that made the situation even more disturbing. Inside the home, forensic teams discovered several areas containing what appeared to be blood, including stains on a wall and across the carpet. Investigators collected samples for DNA testing while continuing to process the residence. But the search didn't end inside the house. The property and surrounding area covered a vast expanse, so authorities began arranging a far more extensive search. More than 50 officers from the Northumberland County Sheriff's Office, Virginia State Police, and the FBI were brought in, forming search grids and methodically working across the property while examining fields, outbuildings, and nearby wooded sections. Investigators were also receiving reports from people within the community, as residents who had witnessed or noticed anything unusual began reaching out to authorities with information. For several days, the search went on. Then, on Tuesday, January 18th, 6 days after Ariel was last seen leaving Little Sioux, search crews discovered something in a wooded section of Samuel's property. They found the body of a woman. Authorities did not immediately confirm her identity, stating only that the remains matched the description of the 28-year-old woman they had been searching for. But for Ariel's family, a search that had begun with hope of bringing her home was now ending in the way they had dreaded most. The body was Ariel. By the time Ariel's body was discovered on Samuel's property, investigators had already noticed another troubling detail about him. When Tyrone Samuel was arrested, his body was covered with scratches and bite marks. Deep injuries were visible across his body, and detectives immediately took notice of them. When investigators questioned Samuel about how he received those injuries, he provided an explanation. He claimed he had been riding a go-kart when he crashed into a tree. Investigators, however, rejected his account. To them, the injuries appeared far more consistent with wounds sustained during a struggle, marks that could have been caused by someone fighting to defend themselves. Considering what investigators had now uncovered on Samuel's property, his story became increasingly difficult to square with the evidence surrounding him. Samuel nevertheless continued insisting that he was innocent. During his initial questioning, he denied having any role in what happened to Ariel and reportedly refused to sign statements or provide a confession. Yet, the physical evidence was beginning to speak for itself, leaving investigators with the painful task of determining exactly what Ariel had suffered after leaving Little Sioux that night. As investigators assembled the evidence, they formed a theory about what occurred after Ariel disappeared. They believed Tyrone Samuel had been waiting for her. Investigators said Samuel had positioned himself near the dumpsters, in an area beyond the reach of Little Sioux's surveillance cameras. Then, sometime after Ariel stepped outside carrying the trash, Samuel attacked her. Investigators believed Ariel was overpowered and removed from the area behind the store. The canine trail that tracked her roughly 100 yards toward Walnut Point Road now carried even greater significance because that was where her scent ended, leading authorities to believe Samuel forced Ariel into his vehicle and drove away from the area. Investigators believed he then took her to his home, where Ariel fought once they were inside. The scratches found across Samuel's body were believed to have occurred during that struggle. After strangling her to death, investigators believed he transported her body and buried it on his property. Blood and additional DNA evidence recovered inside the residence also assisted investigators in reconstructing what they believed had happened there. Authorities concluded that the attack against Ariel was sexually motivated. Samuel would eventually face charges including abduction by force, first-degree murder, and aggravated murder during the commission of rape. For investigators, the evidence presented a horrifying account of what likely occurred during the hours Ariel was missing. She had stepped outside that night expecting to finish one final chore, climb into the car she had already started, and head home. Instead, investigators believed Samuel had been waiting in the darkness just beyond the reach of those cameras. The case against Tyrone Samuel advanced rapidly. On January 25, 2022, 1 week after Ariel's body was discovered, a Northumberland County grand jury indicted Samuel for first-degree murder. He was already being held on Ariel's abduction charge, and prosecutors were now formally alleging that he had killed her. As Samuel returned to court during the weeks that followed, additional evidence against him began coming to light. During a bond hearing, prosecutors disclosed that forensic evidence gathered during the investigation placed Ariel inside Samuel's trailer on the night she disappeared. That evidence directly conflicted with Samuel's assertion that he had not seen Ariel that evening. Prosecutors further argued that Samuel should stay incarcerated as the case proceeded, citing not only the gravity of the charges he faced, but also his prior criminal history. The judge agreed. Samuel was denied bond and ordered to remain in custody. Yet even as the case against Samuel continued through the courts, one part of the story remained uncertain. Exactly how did Tyrone Samuel know Ariel? Following his arrest, members of her family said they did not recognize Samuel. His name meant nothing to them, and they had no knowledge of what relationship, if any, he had with Ariel. Authorities, however, said the two were not strangers. Investigators indicated that Ariel knew Samuel through members of his family. Beyond that, though, they never publicly clarified the connection, including which members of Samuel's family Ariel knew, how she had come to know them, or how well Ariel herself actually knew Samuel. That left one significant distinction. Police believed there was some non-romantic relationship between them, but no clear public explanation was ever given about what that relationship actually involved. For Ariel's family, Samuel remained someone they had never known. He was a man whose name they had never heard until it suddenly became associated with Ariel's murder. For almost 2 years, Tyrone Samuel remained incarcerated while the case against him worked its way through the court system. But the matter would never reach trial, because on October 31, 2023, Samuel appeared before Northumberland County Circuit Court and accepted a plea agreement. Samuel had faced much more severe consequences had the case proceeded to trial, including the possibility of a capital murder conviction and life imprisonment without parole. By accepting the agreement, he avoided that outcome. Under its terms, Samuel pleaded guilty to charges connected to Ariel's abduction and murder, and the judge sentenced him to a combined 27 years in state prison. For Ariel's family, the plea meant Samuel would be held responsible for what he had done, but it also meant there would be no trial. They would never sit inside a courtroom and hear the complete case against him presented. Samuel would also never be required to publicly explain why he targeted Ariel or what, if anything, had occurred between them before that night. Nearly 2 years after Ariel's murder, her family finally received a measure of justice, but they were left with a question they may never be able to answer. Why her? Ariel Smith was 28 years old. She was a sister, a daughter, a young woman still discovering what she wanted the remainder of her life to become. She dreamed of a career in healthcare and had already started working toward that future. Her position at Little Sioux was never meant to be the conclusion of her story. Ariel deserved the opportunity to become the woman she was still growing into. Her family deserved more birthdays, more conversations, more ordinary moments alongside her. Instead, they were left with memories and questions about why Ariel was taken away from them, questions they may never answer. But Ariel's life was so much more than the tragic way it ended. For those who knew her and loved her, that is the part of her story that will always matter most. May Ariel Smith rest in peace. Boston, Lincolnshire, a peaceful, historic English market town where serious crimes are uncommon. Yet on May 20th, 2016, a horrifying discovery inside a smoke-filled flat destroyed this community's sense of security. Firefighters hurried to Elizabeth Road to extinguish a sudden fire. Instead, they encountered a nightmare. In the bathroom lay 33-year-old Marina Erdy. She had not been killed by the flames. Someone had viciously assaulted her, drowned her in her own bathtub, and torched the apartment to conceal their actions. The investigation would soon uncover a poisonous web of jealousy, a disturbing birthday scheme, and a murderer convinced he could carry out the perfect crime. This is the tragic story of Marina Erdy. Boston, Lincolnshire is a historic, low-lying port town in eastern England renowned for its level, expansive landscapes and its famous 14th century church, the Boston Stump. Encircled by enormous, fertile farming fields, the town developed into a thriving center for food processing, agriculture, and factory employment. Due to these abundant industrial and factory positions, it became an important destination for migrant workers hoping to establish new lives. It was here in 2007 that Marina relocated from Latvia in search of new opportunities, eventually securing employment at a nearby fruit packing plant. Marina was extremely popular at work. Her friends said Marina was an attractive and well-liked young woman who quickly distinguished herself from everyone else. She was diligent, driven, and self-assured, and was soon given a higher position than several colleagues. Assuming a leadership role, Marina was recognized for being straightforward and truthful. She expected everything to be handled correctly and wasn't scared to speak out whenever something seemed wrong. She could be something of a perfectionist and always wanted the work completed properly. She was equally determined to create a brighter future for herself. Marina hoped to advance her career, make more money, and establish a comfortable life. Her friends portrayed her as someone who understood what she wanted and wasn't afraid of working hard to obtain it. In 2009, Marina met Gaitis Griskevicius, a Lithuanian man around a year younger than her, who also worked at the same factory. Marina's friends said Gaitis was warm, intelligent, and considerate. The pair quickly fell in love, and their relationship moved forward swiftly. They married in 2010 in what friends recalled as a beautiful, almost fairy tale wedding. At that point, they seemed deeply devoted and thrilled about their future together. Later that year, in November 2010, Marina gave birth to their daughter. Marina cherished her little girl and called her little princess. Friends described her as a caring and devoted mother. Gaitis likewise seemed to be a loving husband and father. From the outside, they appeared to be a happy young family, with a loving marriage and future that seemed bright then for both of them together. Sadly, their relationship eventually started to unravel. By January 2016, divorce proceedings had begun, and the pair were living separately while continuing to share parental responsibility and co-parent their daughter together. During this period, Marina had also entered a new relationship with another man, Alexander Kudryavtsev. Yet on the morning of May 20th, 2016, everything suddenly changed, turning an ordinary morning into the beginning of a devastating investigation. A neighbor of Marina noticed an unusual odor drifting from the stairwell and contacted an emergency engineer, believing there could be a potentially dangerous gas leak somewhere in the building. After arriving, the engineer believed the smell was coming from Marina's flat. Through the letterbox, he could spot indications of a fire inside. The fire brigade was summoned at once. Firefighters forced entry into the flat and swiftly put out the smoldering blaze. While checking the property to ensure nobody remained inside, they initially found nothing. Then, upon entering the bathroom, they encountered a horrifying sight. A woman in her early 30s lay dead inside the bathtub. The bath contained no water, and her body was coated with soot while a hose rested across her. The scene profoundly unsettled the firefighters. Something was plainly wrong. Police were summoned to the property without delay. Officers soon confirmed that the dead woman was Marina Urte. They began reviewing CCTV footage and talking with local residents to establish when Marina had last been seen and who had seen her. Her co-workers at the fruit packing factory were also contacted. Their information helped investigators significantly narrow and tighten the time frame surrounding Marina's final known movements. Police learned Marina had been due at work at 5 that morning, yet she never appeared. Therefore, whatever had happened to her occurred beforehand, giving investigators an important starting point as they searched for answers. At the property, police and fire investigators examined what had caused the blaze. It soon became apparent that the fire was intentional. Forensic findings established that someone had deliberately ignited it after Marina was already dead. The blaze, however, failed to spread effectively and caused only minor damage to the flat. Investigators believed it had been a slow-burning fire, and if it had spread as planned, the results could have been disastrous throughout the entire block of flats, putting many other residents at serious risk. It seemed the killer had intentionally set the fire to destroy evidence and conceal his tracks. Forensic specialists were brought to the flat to look for clues that might lead them to Marina's killer. Yet the fire had severely complicated their task. Smoke had deposited a heavy coating of soot across the entire flat, obscuring surfaces and making bloodstains and other evidence extremely difficult to clearly identify. Investigators found some blood, but it was obvious that considerably more evidence lay concealed beneath the soot. The forensic team chose to leave and later return with additional personnel who could methodically clean, process, and carefully inspect the scene for hidden evidence. Meanwhile, detectives questioned Marina's former husband, Gaitis. He said he had not seen Marina there. However, during their discussion, he shared details that led investigators to examine Marina's private life more closely. What they discovered was disturbing. After her relationship with Gaitis ended, Marina had begun dating another man, 42-year-old Alexander Kudryavtsev, who worked at the same factory. Alexander had a violent history. Police learned he had recently received an 18-year prison sentence for grievous bodily harm after a serious knife attack involving a group of Eastern Europeans. Marina had also recently appeared at Lincoln Crown Court regarding the case. She had been accused of conspiring to pervert the course of justice after allegedly giving Alexander an alibi. Marina, however, was cleared of the charge just days before her death. Once this information first emerged, investigators had to examine whether her association with Alexander and his criminal history could somehow have been connected to her murder. Police were now facing a deeply troubling possibility. Could Marina's relationship with Alexander have ultimately cost her life? One theory suggested Marina may have become entangled in a violent conflict involving rival groups. Detectives considered whether somebody linked to the earlier attack might have been seeking revenge against Alexander, and whether Marina had been targeted merely because she was involved with him. Since Alexander was already behind bars, Marina no longer had the person who might have offered her protection. The possibility of a revenge attack therefore became a significant and serious avenue of inquiry, especially considering the hostility among those connected to the earlier violence. Officers were also deeply concerned about Marina's young daughter and ensured that protecting her remained a clear priority as the investigation continued. Forensic findings showed just how much violence Marina had endured. She suffered a severe head injury, fractured eye sockets, along with several other injuries as well. There was no evidence indicating that a knife had been involved. Investigators concluded that her injuries were compatible with repeated punches, kicks, or blows from a blunt object. A large pool of blood was discovered in the living room, accompanied by smears and smaller drops scattered throughout the area. The distribution indicated that Marina had been violently assaulted there. Detectives believed she may have been hit and knocked down before the attack continued with repeated blows. Blood trails subsequently ran from the living room toward the bathroom, giving investigators another important indication of what had occurred inside the flat. 2 separate marks across the floor showed that Marina's heels had apparently been dragged along the landing toward the bathroom. In the bathroom, investigators discovered additional blood spatter around the bathtub and across the floor, indicating that the assault had continued there. Marina was found naked in the bath, with no bloodied clothing nearby, causing investigators to believe she had probably been undressed either before or during the assault. The pathologist later concluded that Marina had been drowned after the shower head was forced into her mouth. That ultimately caused her death. By then, the leading theory was that Marina had been murdered during a revenge attack carried out by somebody connected with the group involved in the earlier violent conflict. Yet investigators remained unconvinced that this fully explained the circumstances. For one thing, the assault appeared excessively brutal for an ordinary revenge killing. There were also no indications of forced entry, creating another important question. Why would Marina have voluntarily allowed her attacker into her home? Given everything that had occurred during the court proceedings, it seemed reasonable that Marina would have been even more cautious about whom she invited inside. Detectives began considering whether the killing might instead have been deeply personal. Maybe someone held a personal grudge against Marina, but who could that person be? With this possibility now being explored, police began looking much more closely at those closest to Marina. Investigators needed to determine who exactly had been the last person to see her alive. Naturally, they focused on people who knew her closely, including her former partner, her ex-husband Gaius, and her sister, who lived nearby. Investigators understood that most murders are carried out by someone known to the victim, making Marina's close circle an important focus of the investigation. Since Marina and Gaius shared custody of their daughter, detectives asked him when he had last seen Marina. During questioning, Gaius carefully described where he had been during the hours before her death. He said he had celebrated his birthday the previous night and continued celebrating into the next day. Gaius told detectives that Marina had visited his home that evening. They later went together to a local supermarket where they purchased whiskey before returning to Marina's flat. According to Gaius, they spent the evening drinking and talking together, and everything appeared completely normal. He said he had departed from Marina's flat at roughly 2 a.m., and that she had been alive and well when he left. Since Gaius acknowledged being with Marina just hours before she died, detectives naturally scrutinized his version of events. At that point, however, there was little evidence directly connecting him with the killing. Police understood they had to move fast. The senior investigating officer felt that an early arrest offered detectives the strongest opportunity to advance the inquiry and preserve vital evidence. Gaius was arrested on suspicion of murdering Marina. For investigators, this was an important step. They still lacked compelling physical evidence tying him to the crime, but they needed to determine whether his story would survive closer examination. They were also aware that time was running short. If there was insufficient evidence to legally keep him detained, Gaius would have to be released. Detectives interviewed him again under caution, yet his account did not change. He maintained that he and Marina had willingly spent the evening together and had even gone out to purchase whiskey. According to Gaius, he departed her flat at approximately 2 a.m., with Marina alive and well as he walked through the door. While Geitz remained detained, officers searched his home and vehicle and examined him for injuries that could indicate he had been involved in a struggle. They found that he did indeed have injuries on his right hand. Geitz said they resulted from an accident. Even so, investigators still lacked firm evidence connecting him with Marina's murder. After 24 hours in custody, they were forced to release him. Police started reviewing hundreds of hours of CCTV footage from the surrounding area, hoping to uncover anything that might help identify Marina's killer. Yet, reviewing CCTV is anything but straightforward. Investigators must study recordings carefully and systematically, frequently spending weeks examining endless hours of footage. Following hours of painstaking analysis, detectives eventually uncovered something important. The recording, captured on the evening of May 20th, the date Marina was believed to have been murdered, once again focused attention on Geitz. Police saw him. The footage showed Geitz running toward Marina's house at approximately 9:30 p.m., but something about the recording immediately stood out. Marina was not there. This mattered because Geitz had told officers that Marina had been with him and that they had traveled to her house together. Then, about 2 hours later, at roughly 11:30 p.m., a camera recorded them both inside a local supermarket. In the footage, the pair appeared to be getting along, with no clear indications of tension or disagreement between them. Later, another camera recorded Geitz leaving Marina's flat, but the timing created serious questions. He had not left at around 2:01 a.m. as he had claimed. Instead, the recording showed him departing at approximately 7:30 a.m. Geitz then traveled home, reaching his house at around 8:01 a.m. The recordings had already challenged Gietz's account and placed him close to Marina's home on the morning she died. However, detectives understood that this evidence by itself was insufficient. They required additional proof to construct a stronger case against him. Their next question became, what else could they uncover to strengthen the circumstantial evidence they had already discovered? Investigators soon uncovered additional evidence that seemed to tie Geitz to Marina's death. A pair of shorts he had worn in the CCTV footage was later discovered inside his washing machine. Initially, though, the finding appeared to offer little. No visible blood traces could be seen on the shorts. But detectives started considering another question. What had happened to the rest of the clothing Geitz wore that night? The hoodie was gone. The t-shirt, his footwear, and socks were missing too. None of these items were ever located. Investigators then chose to examine his phone, hoping it might reveal additional clues. Instead, what they found raised even more questions. The phone had been completely wiped, with every piece of data removed. Any information previously stored on it had disappeared, prompting detectives to wonder why Geitz had deleted everything. At that stage, police still possessed no direct forensic evidence connecting him with Marina's death. They had CCTV footage, contradictions within his account, and several other suspicious circumstances, but nothing physical that directly tied him to the killing. This presented a potential problem for the prosecution. With no forensic evidence, prosecutors would have to depend largely upon circumstantial evidence and persuade the court that, considered together, it demonstrated Geitz was responsible. Nevertheless, the Crown Prosecution Service concluded there was sufficient circumstantial evidence for the case to proceed to trial. Geitz was arrested again and charged with Marina's murder, yet he continued to deny the accusation and entered a not guilty plea. Proceedings opened in March 2017 at Lincoln Crown Court. Marina's relatives and closest friends attended throughout the trial, hoping at last to hear the evidence about her death and witness justice being done. Through tears, Geitz maintained that he had not murdered his former wife. One of Marina's close friends said their marriage had already started breaking down while Marina was pregnant. Her husband reportedly criticized her for gaining weight during the pregnancy. Once their child was born, he contributed little to the household, despite having more spare time than Marina. Meanwhile, Marina worked lengthy hours and accepted overtime because they needed the income. She repeatedly urged her husband either to do more at home or take on additional hours at work. If he did so, she explained, she could reduce her own working hours and have more time to look after the household. Geitz, however, appeared unwilling to change. According to Marina's friend, he instead continued making disparaging remarks about his wife's appearance and humiliating her. Eventually, Marina reached her limit. In 2015, she told her husband she had made the decision to seek a divorce. Sometime afterward, Marina entered a relationship with another man. As previously mentioned, he was not perfect and carried a troubled history of his own. Still, Marina said he treated her kindly and that she was happy with him. Gitis, however, was enraged. He had remained hopeful that he and Marina could eventually reconcile. Now that another man was part of her life, though, he understood that any chance of getting back together was disappearing. Perhaps permanently, Gitis was described as intensely jealous of Marina's new partner. Someone who knew him said he could not understand how Marina had chosen to leave him for another man. His jealousy appeared directed less toward Marina's happiness and more toward comparing himself against her new partner. He even made vulgar remarks, claiming he was better in bed and implying that he was more physically endowed than Marina's new partner. Then, after Marina was arrested for perverting the course of justice, he saw a chance to use their daughter as a way of trying to win Marina back. Following her arrest, Marina was left in an extraordinarily difficult position. She had no passport, had lost her employment, and no longer had somewhere to live. In a very short time, she had been stripped of nearly everything, while Gitis eventually gained custody of their daughter. Marina desperately wanted to rebuild her life, hoping that circumstances would eventually improve, that she could regain stability, finally feel secure again, and that she would be reunited with her daughter. When Marina was fully exonerated of all wrongdoing, she requested to have her daughter returned to her. Gitis, however, refused. Someone close to the situation suggested that Marina should at least be permitted to visit her daughter under social workers' supervision at a children's center, perhaps once each week for several hours. Gitis remained firmly against the proposal. He reportedly went as far as saying that Marina's name was never even spoken inside the house. Their daughter was forbidden from saying her mother's name in his presence. He also allegedly sent Marina threatening messages about their daughter, including requests for money. On other occasions, he reportedly took their daughter abroad, despite allegedly lacking permission to do so. He would then upload pictures to Facebook, effectively showing Marina where they were. For someone already desperate to reunite with her daughter, this was deeply upsetting. Yet Gitis seemed intent on making Marina's life as hard as possible. Marina filed several complaints against him, although she could not establish that he was responsible. Her car had been damaged while her bicycle had disappeared. She could not definitively say he was behind either incident, but she strongly believed he was, and the circumstances left her afraid. There were also multiple occasions when Gitis was reportedly spotted recording her on his mobile phone. He would arrive outside her home without warning, frightening her enough that she contacted police. Marina had additionally confided in several friends that she suspected Gitis was stalking her. Then one day, Marina phoned a close friend with surprising news. She sounded truly delighted. Apparently, Gitis had reconsidered and agreed to allow Marina to see their daughter. He was reportedly also behaving warmly and pleasantly toward her. Marina thought that perhaps their situation was finally beginning to improve. She hoped they could set aside their disagreements and find some common ground for their daughter's sake. The day before Marina's murder, she phoned a close friend sounding incredibly excited. She revealed that Gitis had told her he still loved her and wanted them to reunite. As the father of her child, he left Marina uncertain about whether she should give their relationship another opportunity. He also wanted to visit and celebrate his birthday with her. Her friend immediately became concerned and cautioned Marina against meeting him by herself. Just as it appeared Gitis might avoid a murder conviction and leave court a free man, an unexpected witness came forward. It was his cellmate, to whom he had reportedly confessed everything in detail. According to the witness's testimony, Gitis admitted murdering his former wife Marina before setting her flat alight to destroy evidence and conceal the crime. The revelation dramatically altered the direction of the trial. Following all the uncertainty over the missing forensic evidence, prosecutors now had someone who claimed he had personally heard Gitis confess to the murder and was willing to give evidence under oath. The prosecution demonstrated that Gitis had become consumed with intense jealousy after discovering Marina had begun dating another man. A close friend of Marina, Anita Zelenova, testified that he had openly told her he was prepared to pay someone to get rid of her, which she understood as meaning murder. Pathologists and forensic specialists exposed the horrific violence of the assault. Griskovicius used his bare hands to brutally beat Marina around the head, inflicting a traumatic brain injury as well as extensive fractures to her nose, jaw, and both eye sockets. While she lay incapacitated, he dragged her naked body into the bathroom and pressed a shower attachment directly against her face, drowning her. Gitis chose not to take the witness stand during the trial. Instead, His defense depended entirely upon recorded police interviews conducted following his arrest, during which he created an alibi. He said it was his 32nd birthday and that Marina had willingly visited him to wish him well. He acknowledged that they had gone together to an Asda supermarket to buy whiskey and crisps before returning to her flat. He alleged that, while they were drinking, Marina became cheeky and invited him to bed. According to his account, they started having sex but stopped because both of them were too drunk. He maintained that he left her flat unharmed at around 2 a.m., telling police, "When I left, she was quite happy. We had some kisses at the flat. She was all right." Throughout the proceedings, he insisted he was devastated by her death, but had nothing to do with it. The reality was likely very different from the version Gitis presented. Marina may have decided she did not want to reconcile with him, and, furious at her decision, he murdered her. The jury dismissed his account as a collection of deliberate lies. Since the case rested largely on circumstantial evidence heavily involving timelines, CCTV, and his cellmate's confession, jurors examined everything carefully before reaching a unanimous guilty verdict. Judge Michael Heath imposed a life sentence, with a minimum term of 23 years. During sentencing, the judge issued a severe condemnation. You've been found guilty by the jury on compelling evidence. I have detected not a shred of remorse in your body. You inflicted upon your wife a brutal assault. She suffered a traumatic brain injury. You weren't satisfied with that and you finished her off. Gitis Griscovicius will spend decades in prison, yet no punishment can reverse the trauma he caused. To protect her safety and privacy, British authorities have kept the identity and whereabouts of Marina's daughter strictly confidential. Today, she remains protected, growing up beyond the shadow of this tragedy, surrounded by relatives committed to remembering Marina not by the way she died, but by the love she gave. In their closing statement, Marina's family said her death had created a huge, lasting emptiness throughout all their lives, a reminder of a promising future taken away through a senseless act of absolute control. Rest in peace, Marina. The woman discovered here was only one among countless others who either disappeared or endured abuse at the hands of the man residing in this house. After 2 full years, the decomposing remains of these 11 women were discovered inside, causing neighbors to realize that the terrible odor lingering heavily in the air wasn't coming from a sausage factory, but from this very house. It soon came to be known as the True House of Horrors. The case was so horrifying that even following his acquittal, many continue to firmly believe the so-called Cleveland Strangler had more than 11 victims. That's because several other killings in this town remain unsolved even to this very day, and every known victim was a woman. So today, we remember these women because no troubled past can ever excuse what they endured. Once you hear the complete and disturbing story, you'll understand exactly why. His name was Anthony Sewell, the man you previously watched casually explaining how he killed his victims in that video. Like many serial killers before him, he too had a troubled past. That history shaped his warped view of women, treating them as nothing more than objects he could torture, harass, and kill. Anthony was one of 7 children born to Claudia Garrison, a single mother struggling to care for them all. Then tragedy struck when one of Claudia's daughters, Anthony's sister, died, leaving 7 children of her own behind with nowhere else to live. They went to live with Claudia, raising the household's total number of children to 14. You may have heard the old rhyme about the woman who lived in a shoe and had so many children she didn't know what to do, but this was no children's tale. According to Anthony's niece Leona, one of the 7 children forced to move in, their time inside that house was absolute and complete misery. Claudia subjected them to savage beatings and constant abuse, while her own 7 children watched from the sidelines. During one of the most horrifying moments of her childhood, Leona remembered how Claudia, the very woman meant to protect and care for her, made her strip naked before brutally beating her. In a later interview, Leona described this horrifying experience, but the nightmare continued. Claudia's own children were reportedly spared from the worst of her fury. Yet for Leona and the other girls in the house, the abuse never truly stopped. According to Leona, one of Claudia's older sons also participated in the cruelty, routinely beating and assaulting the young girls. Tragically, it wasn't limited to one person. Other male relatives living in the house reportedly joined them, creating a cycle of horrific and unspeakable violence and trauma. Leona also revealed that Anthony's soul was often silent during these acts. He never stepped in. Instead, he would sit quietly nearby and watch while the abuse unfolded directly in front of him. But Leona didn't understand that, for Anthony, witnessing mistreatment had become almost ordinary. Raised in a home where abuse occurred there every single day, he started copying the cruelty he witnessed. Shockingly, at only 11 years old, he began molesting his own 10-year-old niece, Leona's sister, subjecting her to the same suffering he had witnessed and continuing the cycle of pain embedded in their home. Fast forward to January 24, 1978, and Anthony joined the United States Marine Corps. Unexpectedly, he thrived in the military. During the next 7 full years, he established an impressive record, receiving multiple good conduct medals, certificates, ribbons, and letters of appreciation. By every account, his military career was marked by discipline, hard work, and achievement. After his honorable discharge in 1985, Anthony went back home to Cleveland for a while. He managed to maintain a fairly normal life, but that facade collapsed 4 years later in 1989, when he committed his first known violent offense. It began with Melvette Stockwell, a 3-month pregnant woman and an S-worker who thought she was merely meeting a new client. On that fateful evening, she followed Anthony home, expecting nothing more than a routine transaction. Do the work, collect her money, and go. But he was nothing like her usual clients. The moment they entered, his charm completely vanished. Anthony's whole demeanor changed. Suddenly aggressive, he grabbed her without warning before she had time to react. Using zip ties and a belt, he restrained her hands and feet, then stuffed a rag in her mouth to stop her from screaming. She was completely and utterly under his control. Then, unexpectedly, for a moment, he stopped. Rather than assaulting her immediately, he told her he planned to feed her before killing her, before anything else. Imagine being told that. You believe death is seconds away, yet your captor is discussing giving you food first. It was like being placed on some twisted death row. The terror of that moment must have been impossible to comprehend. Then, completely unexpectedly, Anthony chose to take a nap before carrying out his plan. That became her only opportunity for her. Driven by desperation, she managed to free herself, climb out through a window, and call for assistance from the rooftop for help. A neighbor noticed her and contacted police, and when officers arrived, they found her trembling and terrified that night. Miraculously, though, she was alive. Anthony was arrested and faced charges of rape, attempted rape, and kidnapping. In 1989, 3 women living on Anthony's street had already been murdered at the time. It soon became clear that Anthony was already firmly on the authorities' radar at the time. Yet despite the allegations against him, he pleaded guilty to rape and received just 5 to 15 years in prison. While incarcerated, Anthony underwent several psychological evaluations over and over again. Still, he repeatedly and firmly claimed he would never commit those kinds of acts again. Despite his disturbing history, Anthony convinced the system that he had genuinely changed. Even more disturbing, he was never classified as a sex offender. So when he was released in 2005, he could freely walk the streets of Cleveland, Ohio, like any other citizen. That year, he moved into 12,220 Imperial Avenue, a residence that would soon become notorious. Then, 2 years later, Anthony mysteriously lost his position at a nearby factory. Without employment, he started receiving benefits and earning extra money collecting scrap metal. But as his financial circumstances worsened, his mental condition declined as well. He grew increasingly isolated, spending much of his time inside his house, avoiding neighbors, and behaving more unpredictably. People living nearby noticed he had changed. He looked disheveled, distant, and unlike the person they had once known. Then came the pivotal moment. Anthony entered a relationship with a woman named Lori, the niece of Cleveland's governor, and together they quickly fell into a toxic pattern of heavy drug use, especially crack. While Anthony sank further into addiction, Lori wanted to escape. So in 2007, after Anthony lost his factory job, Lori saw an opportunity to get away. She left him, determined to put that life behind her. Anthony, though, was nowhere near ready to accept it. The heartbreak broke something within him, pushing him into a darker spiral. He remained on Imperial Avenue, but from then forward, his isolation grew even stronger for years. He retreated further inward. His conduct grew increasingly unstable, and then the horrors started. That same year, a 10-year-old girl from the neighborhood disappeared without a trace from the neighborhood. Only months later, another woman, 33-year-old nursing assistant Tishana Culper, vanished. Tishana had battled drug addiction, but she was also a committed healthcare worker, doing everything she could to rebuild her life. Nobody reported her disappearance. No police alerts, no flyers. Simply another woman missing. 2 months afterward, 25-year-old LaShonda Long, a mother of 3, disappeared too. Then in October 2008, 45-year-old Michelle Mason, a mother of 2 sons and devoted volunteer with the local AIDS task force, was reported missing by her mother. Terrified, her mother went to police in early December. She pleaded with them to investigate her daughter's disappearance, but nothing came of it. The case stayed open, while nobody ever linked the clues together. Meanwhile, on Imperial Avenue, a stomach-churning stench was becoming worse with every passing day. The whole neighborhood complained about a smell so foul it made people gag simply walking by. And the most disturbing detail? Anthony Sewell himself smelled of it. Whenever someone pinched their nose and asked about the rotten odor hanging around him, Sewell always had an explanation ready. "It's that damn sausage factory next door," he'd say casually, and somehow people accepted it. After all, Ray's Sausage had operated for more than 5 decades, and well, it was a meat factory. Perhaps it really did smell. Still, the complaints kept piling up steadily thereafter. Eventually, City Hall stepped in and sent inspectors to examine the situation. Pressure mounted, and Ray's Sausage had to take drastic measures, spending over $30,000, 0 cents on extensive cleaning, new ventilation systems, and odor removal technology. Even so, the stench refused to disappear by then. It lingered in the air, heavy and foul. By then, Sewell was coming apart. In early December 2008, a frightened woman rushed directly toward a police car parked nearby in the neighborhood, bleeding, trembling, and screaming. She told officers Sewell had attacked her, forcibly pulled her into his house, strangled her, and tried to assault her. When police entered Sewell's foul-smelling residence and arrested him, he offered his own account, claiming she was the criminal who had attempted to rob him. Both had scratches and bruises, leaving officers struggling to decide who was telling the truth. Both were arrested, but eventually released because there wasn't enough evidence to hold either one. Only a month later, in January 2009, Kim Smith, a 44-year-old woman caring for her elderly father, disappeared. During that year alone, 5 additional women, Nancy Cobbs, Imelda Hunter, Janice Webb, Talicia Fortson, and Diane Turner, disappeared without a trace. The disturbing number of women vanishing from such a small area did not escape the community's attention. Residents organized searches, distributed flyers, and worked together to draw attention to the disappearances in their area. Remarkably, Anthony himself took part in those efforts, blending among people desperately searching for the very women he had taken. Then October 2009 arrived. A woman named Shawn Morris went to Anthony's home, apparently unfazed by the overpowering stench that seemed to cling to the air. They spent the evening drinking, taking drugs, and talking. There was nothing intimate about it, only ordinary, casual conversation between them. The following morning, while getting ready to leave, she realized her ID was still upstairs. As she climbed the stairs to retrieve it, she suddenly heard a chilling clicking sound behind her. Before she could respond, Anthony lunged toward her, attacking her without warning. He overpowered and assaulted her like so many women before her, then moved throughout the house, securing and locking every door and window. It quickly became obvious that he had no plans to release her. But Shawn noticed a brief opportunity, one she knew she could not afford to waste. Using every ounce of strength she had, she hurled herself through a 3rd-story window, plunging 30 feet to the ground below. Realizing what had happened, Anthony raced downstairs completely naked, desperate to pull her back inside. But this time, luck wasn't with him. 2 people passing by saw the horrifying scene and immediately called 911. Thanks to them, Shawn was taken to the hospital with serious injuries, including multiple broken bones from the fall. Despite the vicious attack, she decided not to tell police what had happened to her. Yet another woman would come forward only a week later. On October 27th, a woman named Latundra Billups came forward to describe her own horrifying encounter with Anthony Sewell. She had endured a terrifying ordeal back in September, one that followed the same pattern as before. She had gone to his house for a drink, only for him to suddenly become violent. Unlike many others, she was fortunate enough to survive. Still, the trauma had kept her quiet until now. Finally, in late October, her testimony gave authorities enough grounds to obtain both an arrest warrant and a search warrant for Anthony Sewell. On October 29th, SWAT officers raided his house, expecting to arrest Anthony. But what they discovered was much worse than they could ever have imagined. Anthony was not home, but the stench was overpowering. Dead flies covered every surface. Then came the horrific discoveries. bodies in various stages of decomposition, one after another, some having been rotting there for years. The house of horrors that had tormented the neighborhood for so long was finally exposed, and a manhunt was launched immediately across the city. For 2 days, police searched the city for Anthony Sewell. Then, on October 31, officers spotted him casually walking down the street. They pulled over and handcuffed him right there. He appeared disheveled, dirt and twigs stuck to his clothing, as though he had been sleeping outdoors, concealed in bushes for days. But there was no escaping what investigators had discovered inside his home. To understand Anthony's victims, let's learn about them before addiction consumed their lives, because each had stories, dreams, and struggles. They had every reason to continue living, and there was never any reason for them to be killed. Crystal Dozier, a mother of 7, was 35 years old when she disappeared in May 2007. Her son, a U.S. Marine, desperately searched for her, but she was not found until police uncovered her remains in Anthony's backyard. 2 years later, loved ones remembered that Crystal had turned to drugs after losing one of her children, a grief that consumed her. Despite those struggles, she was a devoted mother who, in another life, might have lived a very different life. Deshauna Culver was 33 years old, a trained nursing assistant and cosmetologist who had once imagined a future spent helping others. But tragedy struck when her boyfriend died by suicide, sending her into a spiral of grief and addiction. At one point, she lived just 4 houses from Anthony, unaware of the fate waiting for her. She disappeared in June 2008, leaving loved ones who never stopped wondering what had become of her. Deshaunda Long, only 25 years old, was Anthony's youngest victim and a mother of 3. She vanished 3 months after Deshauna. No one even filed a missing person report for her, a heartbreaking reminder of how addiction can isolate victims from the support they desperately need. Her remains were never completely recovered. Only her skull was discovered in Anthony's basement. Meanwhile, Michelle Mason had worked tirelessly to rebuild her life. At 45, she was living with HIV and had struggled with heroin addiction, yet she refused to allow those battles to define her. After surviving a shooting, she devoted her life to helping others, working with an AIDS outreach program while concentrating on her children. She vanished on or around October 4, 2008. Another life filled with strength and hope, tragically brought to an end. Tonya Carmichael was a mother, a survivor, and tragically the first victim identified from Anthony Sewell's House of Horrors. Although she battled substance abuse, her loved ones never stopped looking out for her. When she disappeared in December 2008, they immediately knew something was wrong. Tanya's mother acted without hesitation. Within a week, she reported her missing, desperate for answers. But police saw only another black woman with a drug problem and failed to treat the case seriously. Even after her abandoned car was discovered near Sewell's neighborhood, they overlooked the warning sign. Years later, forensic testimony would reveal the brutality of her death, strangled with a telephone charger, discarded as though she meant nothing. But Tanya meant something. She was cherished, she was mourned, and her family never stopped fighting to ensure she would not be forgotten. Kim Yvette Smith, 44, was a caretaker in every meaning of the word. Her life was devoted to caring for her sick father, carrying the heavy burden of responsibility on her shoulders. In January 2009, she disappeared without a trace, leaving her father behind and devastating everyone who knew her. Imelda Amy Hunter, 47, lived a life shaped by hardship and resilience. She was raised in Chicago and loved to read, a girl who once had dreams ahead of her. Then life changed unexpectedly when she was just 14. She became pregnant by one of her teachers and delivered a child with cerebral palsy who later died. That unbearable responsibility rested on her young shoulders, and eventually addiction entered her life. Still, she was more than those struggles. She was a mother, a woman who had once carried so much promise. Nancy Cobbs was a 44-year-old grandmother, profoundly loved and desperately missed. When she vanished in April 2009, her family refused to remain idle. They broke into abandoned houses, searching desperately for her. Tragically, her body was discovered only months afterward, wrapped inside 6 plastic bags. Later forensic testimony showed that she had been strangled with a shoelace. Yet another victim of Anthony's cruelty. Taliesha Fortson, 31, endured a difficult childhood, moving repeatedly from one foster home to another. She often ran away while searching for something better, but addiction gradually tightened its hold on her. Like Taliesha and Amy, nobody even realized she had disappeared until the bodies started surfacing. Janice Webb, 48, was last seen on June 3, 2009, inside her boyfriend's home in Lakewood, Ohio. Living just outside Cleveland, she was a woman facing battles of her own, never imagining that meeting Anthony would become her final chapter. Diane Turner, 38, had suffered the unimaginable, losing all 6 of her children to the state. The agony of that separation drove her further into addiction, yet she remained a mother who had once held hope for her family. She became the final one of Anthony's victims to disappear. In September 2009, the same month Latundra Billups, 37, survived his vicious attack. These women were more than victims. They were women who had lived, loved, and endured unimaginable hardship. Their lives deserved to be remembered not merely as pieces of Anthony's crimes, but as reminders of the lives stolen from them and the justice they eventually received. What's especially heartbreaking is that when authorities finally captured Anthony Sewell, he was 50 years old, meaning he had already spent decades moving freely while committing these crimes without being noticed. His arrest on October 29, 2009, marked only the start of a lengthy, drawn-out legal battle. Sewell's trial was first set for June 2, 2010, but a string of postponements followed. His defense lawyers argued they required additional time to prepare, examine thousands of pages of evidence, and study hours of surveillance footage recorded from a neighboring property. The trial moved to September 7, then February 14, then May 2, and finally June 6, 2011, when the proceedings finally started. Sewell faced 85 charges, among them 11 counts of aggravated murder and 74 counts involving rape, kidnapping, abuse of a corpse, and tampering with evidence. His original plea was not guilty by reason of insanity, but later he changed it to simply not guilty. Despite his efforts to avoid responsibility, the evidence against him was overwhelming. Survivors gave testimony. Forensic specialists described the horrific condition of his house, while jurors were shown disturbing photographs from the crime scene. On July 22, 2011, following weeks of testimony, the jury convicted him on all but 2 counts. There was no ambiguity in the verdict. Anthony Sewell was a serial killer who targeted the most vulnerable women within his community. During sentencing, prosecutors argued that Sewell had shown no remorse whatsoever for what he had done. The jurors agreed. On August 10, they recommended the death penalty, and 2 days afterward, Judge Dick Ambrose affirmed their recommendation. Sewell was formally sentenced to death. On September 14, 2011, he was moved to death row at Chillicothe Correctional Institution, a stark reversal of the freedom he had once used to terrorize his victims. Sewell and his lawyers spent years submitting appeal after appeal, claiming that intense media coverage, a closed courtroom, and inadequate legal representation had deprived him of a fair trial. The Ohio Supreme Court rejected his appeal in December 2016, and when he brought the case before the United States Supreme Court in 2017, they declined to hear it. By May 2020, Sewell had exhausted every option available to him. Then, before the state could execute him, fate intervened. On February 8, 2021, at 61 years old, Sewell died in a prison hospital from an unspecified terminal illness. Some speculated that it was liver failure or cancer, but no official cause was ever released. He may be gone, but the nightmare he left behind remains, a haunting reminder that he not only took lives but lived among the dead, sleeping beside his victims' corpses. The trauma he caused did not simply vanish when he died. The weight of it still remains on the community. In fact, in 2021, 5 of Sewell's surviving victims bravely shared their experiences publicly, revealing the horrors they endured and the failures that allowed them to happen. And here's the harsh truth. Back then, when Black women disappeared, law enforcement barely lifted a finger for many years. And let's be honest, this was not an isolated case. We've covered multiple cases exactly like this, including another notorious strangler from Charlotte, who also murdered 11 Black women. The warning signs were everywhere, yet officers failed to connect them even then. Was it negligence, or did they simply not care? Eventually, the city of Cleveland had to answer for those failures, paying $1,300,000 in settlements to the families of Sewell's victims. But here's the question: was that justice, or merely a price for neglect? Now, I want to hear from you. Do you believe there were additional victims beyond those officially connected to him? Given the unsolved murders of women in that area, could some of those cases have been linked to Sewell?